Hey everybody, welcome to the final video of this 3-part series. If you haven't watched the first 2 videos, I'd recommend watching those first, so feel free to hit the bar in the top right for the last video and do the same thing again on that second video if you need to get to the first. Anyways, today's goal is to briefly talk about tournaments for the individual player and tie everything we talked about in the last 2 videos together to explain why the MK community operates the way it currently does right now. So last video's conclusion was the following. 1. The best competitive format for Mario Kart 8 is a 6v6 match, as it increases the amount of skills tested, drastically reduces the impact of RNG, and allows for more flexible formatting. This means that stuff like double elimination and best of 3s can be ran, which are more common than single elimination in most competitive games. Number 2, there's a problem with 6v6 matches because they have a high barrier to entry and it's not something that most new players are going to immediately find their footing in. And this is likely because many new players need to learn the basic game fundamentals before throwing team play and coordination into the mix. It's also just easier for them to sign up for stuff as a solo player, or a friend for instance. And number 3, as a result of point 2, it is still necessary to run non-6v6 formats. And it's easier for players to gauge improvement in FFA or solo activities and be more hopeful to have a chance at winning, and it's also easier to just participate in. So, to start this video, I'm going to explain what FFA, or free-for-all format is, and why it works so well for us. And then at the end of the video, I want to talk about how it may apply to in-person tournaments and what we can do to see more growth moving forward. So when you think of solo tournaments for fighting games, you'll immediately envision a head-to-head 1 versus 1. This is because most games are built to feature this format. And as intriguing as a 1v1 meta may sound as a pure test of skill, it really just doesn't work out very well for Mario Kart. Now, there are some Mario Kart games where itemless 1v1s, like, it's a decent test of driving, but as mentioned heavily in the first video, a format like this isn't really evaluating many other skills, and even if you really want to play like this in Deluxe, it's not very satisfying, because the bump physics in this game are way more impactful on an itemless race than the games before it, and it's incredibly unsatisfying to play without coins because it's slow, and if you do play with coins, whoever collects the first coin has a completely unfair advantage. Additionally, Mario Kart is built to be played with 8 or 12 players, not 2. So by skipping out on the rest of the lobby, you're taking away pack navigation and sandbagging, which are big facets of the metagame. Now, not everybody can front run all the time as well, so maybe the faster player tends to win more in a 1 versus 1, but it's a really boring game when played this way, because it's usually more about who takes an early lead than anything else. So, cross out 1v1s as a good metagame for the individual player. Now, this doesn't mean that solo tournaments are off the table, because luckily there is a fun alternative in the form of FFAs. So, a free-for-all tournament simply implies that it's every man for himself. You typically get a room of 12 people, and every player plays for themselves and nobody else. And players who place in the top half of the room, in a preset amount of races, they move on to the next round, and for the finals, or the final round, the top scorer just wins the tournament. And it's pretty simple, but I still need to explain why this is a great tournament format for individual players. Now, at first it sounds weird to hear top half advances instead of winner advances. Now, why would you want to equalize somebody placing 6th to the top scorer of the room? And the answer is mainly because, like discussed in the last video, the game has high variance for each individual player. So while playing in teams practically always favors the better team at the end of the day, this isn't always the case in solo events. A single chain of bad luck sending a player from 1st to 9th is absolutely game-changing, and it's possible that not every player will suffer a fate so cruel in a given round. So, the reality is that the people who play the best in a given room may not always place first due to the variability of the game. And additionally, even in head-to-head tournaments, technically half the players, 1 of 2 or 6 of 12 if you're playing teams, advance into the next round anyways. So, placing in the top half is still something that requires skill in order to accomplish, and this way you may not have to take as many risks to beat weaker players, because lots of times the best way to get first place in a room is by simply chaining first place finishes, but the blue shell's existence makes this a higher risk if one comes at the wrong time. Top half advanced formats tend to do a pretty good job at ensuring that the more skilled players are the ones who are passing into the next round, because there's a skill to be had in just placing in a high spot, even if it's not first. And when a good player is unable to make it through an early round also, it ensures that they had more than a slim chance to recover from bad luck. The expectation for players should be to place well, So when they don't place well and argue that they should have made it through by getting 6th, the argument loses a lot of substance. Yes, you can pass to the next round by getting 6th place out of 12, but if you're relying on 6th place finishes to advance, you probably don't deserve to be winning the tournament. It's more of a last chance qualifier in a sense, not a specific target. And it's still important that there is wiggle room for the sake of protecting players who did play well, but when you stumble into the bottom half of the standings under any circumstance, there's pretty much justification for your elimination regardless of how unlucky you were in most instances. And the solution to not getting in these tight 6th versus 7th place battles late in each round is simply to score well enough to comfortably make it through to the next round to begin with. Because top half advance makes it harder for good players to lose early due to bad luck, it means that to make it to a tournament finals, you need to be consistently solid. If you get top 6 by a fluke, you still have to do it again with presumably harder opponents. And by the time that the finals arrive, it's possible many players in it never won a round that they were in, but they will have earned the right to be there on the basis that they were consistently able to place well, even when the rounds got increasingly more difficult. While it's possible that the player who played the best doesn't win every single tournament, due to the nature of teamless play, whoever wins a large FFA tournament with plenty of strong players is certainly deserving of the title. You have to be really good to win a large Mario Kart Central tournament at the very least. One way I'd like to improve these tournaments is to offer more rounds to players who don't make the cut in the first round or two. Because these kinds of tournaments should hypothetically appeal to people playing without a team ordinarily, there should probably be more matches for those who lose early, especially since many newer players without teams probably aren't ready for the sometimes fierce competition from the more veteran players. Another big issue with free-for-all is that you can't really run double elimination like in head-to-head formats such as 1v1 or 6v6. Double elimination is commonly used in gaming tournaments because it allows for more accurate placings and comebacks via loser bracket runs, but it does so in a way that still definitely punishes losses. Now imagine a new player is very good and they show up to a tournament, and because nobody plays that player, they get seeded at the very bottom, and as a result, have to face off against the best player round 1. In single elimination, if they lose, their tournament's over, and nobody realizes that they're good because they didn't win any sets. But in double elimination, this gives a player a chance to show that they, at the very least, can beat some low to mid-level players who also lost early, so they can prove that they're able to win and get seeded higher at the next event. Now, free-for-all is not very good of double elimination because of how grand finals would work out. In the grand finals, 6 people would presumably advance from the winners' finals without ever being in the losers bracket, pretty much the top 6 in an ordinary finals. But 6 would advance from the loser's side, and this is a lose-lose scenario, because if, for example, 4 players coming from loser's side place in the top half in the grand finals, that means that 2 people get eliminated, and now you have 2 players still in winners bracket and 8 players in losers. It essentially would become a mess to double eliminate everybody, and in the process the room gets smaller each round, and we don't like small rooms very much. The alternative is just playing one round and whoever wins just wins, but it's unfair for everyone who made it from winners bracket if a player that got sent to the losers bracket is allowed to win then and there after these players from the winners bracket never got double eliminated. Regardless, I think we need to talk about potential alternatives to ensuring more races per player in these events. While FFAs are still great tournaments that I believe are necessary to have, I think they're flawed, unfortunately. We should definitely focus on how to make them more rewarding for players of all kinds, but namely players without a team. This includes a demographic of players that we may not even be considering, LAN players. And while it doesn't sound like an issue of today, especially during the COVID crisis, this is an up-and-coming part of the MK community in my opinion. And it may take a while for a LAN scene to ever have the quality of competition that our online tournaments have right now, but I think it's worth taking a look and supporting, because an in-person scene can do wonderful things for a game. Let's be realistic here. Offline gaming tends to be more inviting than online when it comes to the social aspect of everything. People tend to be friendlier in person because they can't hide behind a screen, and as a result, in-person tournaments attract more ordinary people to them, and if things are running well, you can sell people into wanting to be a part of a game's community based on their experience outside the game alone. This, in my opinion, is how the Smash community got so large. A lot of people loved Melee, but for that game, offline was the only solution to viable tournaments in the past. People cared about getting better, and the push to get better really drove people to take pride in the game and make plenty of new friends in the process. For us, it feels unthinkable because the community consists of players all across the world right now, but the more the competitive game becomes mainstream, the more people will start getting interested in competing. Before the lockdown at least, the Las Vegas Mario Kart 8 scene got started, and I think this is kind of the blueprint that scene for the potentials LANs have. And while hard for a LAN tournament to hit the ground running, The love of the game ultimately won out in Vegas, and it seemed to turn into lots of friendships. When one person heard about our online scene, word got around. Many of them are involved in the online community now, and I think that's really cool. Was it a fluke? Maybe, maybe not, but there definitely are some things I believe have to happen if the game is ever going to start establishing itself in more places like it has in Vegas. In my limited experience at in-person tournaments, there's a lot of people who show up for fun and to have a good time. And this alone is great because people simply going out and having fun playing the game is accomplishing what the game set out to achieve in the first place. A lot of these players don't care about the results too, and that's fine, but if something like this is ever going to thrive, there needs to be more people that do care. And the fact that so few people are dedicated means that 6v6 tournaments are quite literally impossible in person, despite it being the best competitive mode. And even with a booming LAN scene, 6v6 would be somewhat difficult. So, we'll talk about FFA again, because they're probably the best we have for an in-person format right now. At the start of the video, I mentioned that it's a disadvantage that so many people naturally think that it can't be a good competitive game. This being such a widespread thought is holding the game back. A lot of the reason why this is the belief in the first place is because the community is still relatively hidden, and people don't really know that serious players exist, and because it's not more mainstream, people will automatically make whatever assumptions they want to make. As the community continues to grow, progress will start to become undeniable, but at the same time, the game needs more people who are passionate about it and want to get better. When one person has competitive drive, it may influence others to want to try to improve to beat them. But it's hard for many players to start, because the road to truly getting good enough to start beating experienced players is hard. As it is right now, I think the very few LAN tournaments are still pretty imbalanced in their competitions. In Ohio's few in-person events, there are only really 3 people who I would say are active Mario Kart players, and I think I'm the only one who really actively does the online tournaments from that group. More people could definitely compete and even win if they had more interest in improving, but they just don't really. And this is what I think the big hurdle is, because there's more than just 3 good players in the state of Ohio, but the word isn't really out about in-person events being really worthwhile. If the level of competition could go up even just a little, then you can start having better events, but we need people to want to take initiative to improve their game to start. I think this is why a key element to MK9's eventual success in the community, for us, is to be more active with tutorials, guides, and help. Content creation is low compared to Mario Kart Wii, and I think this is just where we need more voices. The actual LAN tournaments themselves are flawed too, because of the lack of initiative of people wanting to improve. From every LAN event I've watched, this is a recurring issue. One thing that I praised about free-for-alls was that a deserving player will always win a stacked tournament. And this isn't always the case in tournaments like LANs, and at surface level, it's not really obvious why this is the case. The advantage that Smash has over us is that you can really have a high quality match between just 2 players, and a tournament with only 4 people could end up having great matches in it. This is not really the case for Mario Kart, unfortunately, and I'll try to explain why through example. Now, there's a huge difference in skill between a good Division 2 level player and a good Division 8 level player. But for those that don't know what I mean, divisions pretty much attach a skill level to a certain range of players, with lower numbers being higher competition. So for the sake of this discussion, a D2 level player is likely a very good player even by the standards of the online tournament community, and they're somebody that on a good day could win a larger tournament. A Division 8 level player on average is someone who still understands the game at a higher level and would likely decimate any casual player, but they're still not really ready to compete against the best players in the world. The skill difference is absolutely staggering in favor of the D2 player when pairing these two up together. In our current Wi-Fi tournaments, a good D2 player would still likely be a long shot to win, but they would still have a reasonable chance of reaching a tournament final. I would say 10% could be a reasonable estimate if the tournament isn't completely loaded with elite level players. On the other hand, a Division 8 player could probably never make a tournament final at their current level. Obviously they can improve and get there, but they wouldn't be considered a Division 8 level player if they did. On whether or not they would make a tournament final, this would be like comparing 10% odds with astronomically low odds. The D2 player may be over 100 times more likely to make the finals, just because they're better equipped at understanding and reacting to higher level play. One of the skills that sets the great players apart from the average ones is having the ability to understand how to beat people who fully understand what you want to do. Many average players are focused on reducing driving errors and not doing anything stupid with their items, and This stuff is second nature to the better player, and the better player will be focused instead on what another player will do with their item, where they will drive, or even if they're hiding a better item like the Shock or Blue Shell in team matches. You can always outline casual players, but beating people who know what you want to do almost as much as you know what you want to do is something that can't always be done. And being able to do it more often than other players is sometimes the difference between the good and the great. At a LAN event, this idea is pretty much all thrown out the window. The D2 and D8 player may still have the exact same skill level as they ordinarily do, but the rest of the players they'll compete against will not. The D2 player may be able to compete in some lobbies that the D8 player will struggle in, but at the in-person event, that's likely all thrown out the window. And that's because the weaker player between the two will not be tested in the same way they would in a higher level lobby here, and will lose a massive disadvantage they would ordinarily have against the Division 2 player. If these two players are the best ones at the event by a considerable amount, then who wins will likely feel random. This is because both players will have enough talent to easily outdrive everybody else in the room, leaving a metagame between the two that is frankly unsatisfying. In any rounds before the finals, everything will still be fun because placing in the top half is a very simple goal. Both players will likely be more than deserving to make it through to the finals. The issue begins with the final round, where the possibility of one player heavily outplaying another and losing to them can happen due to the type of lobby that they're playing in. Both players will inevitably meet in the finals, and then the competition will come down to what happens in the front. The player in second will more often have the advantage, because unlike in a stronger room, there will rarely be pressure coming from third place. Despite the Blue Shell, first place is ordinarily a good state of advantage in a balanced lobby of players, because they, for the most part, only have to worry about what's behind them. In second place, you'll have to make sure that the person in front of you doesn't successfully hit you, because maybe they pull a bomb or something and that's always stressful, while also worrying about the person in third place red shelling you. What this means is that in this example LAN finals, it's pretty possible that any driving advantage won't matter for the D2 player, because the person in second can chuck red shells without fear, and because both players are likely to be far ahead, everyone else will get more blue shells and shocks, and who knows how those will be used. In the end, while it's still more likely that the better player wins, my guess would be that they win about 60% of the time in this kind of case, the variability differs quite a lot from normal play. Though the better player wins about 1.5 times as much as the weaker one in this instance, it still pales in comparison to them being about 100 times more likely to make a deep run in a harder tournament. The skill of the two players doesn't change at all, it's simply the environment around them that will impact them. Ideally, you'd like to have the environment that results in the better players winning more frequently, while still having very obvious ways for those who aren't winning to improve. And in this sense, the D8 player isn't learning anything, he's likely just gaining false hope, and maybe first place money I guess, so maybe they don't actually care. If you think that driving in second place is the win condition in this hypothetical D2 versus D8 top 2 battle, you may be mistaken because of random triple reds appearing from the people in third. Now, the person in third likely will not gain anything from throwing reds at you in second, but they may be a weaker player who doesn't understand that. So again, I'm not sure that the better player has really any strategic advantage over the other player. The game, and only the top two, is very simple, and better driving may not be enough to win. If only two players are viable to win, it also means that first place finishes are necessary, despite being more risky to achieve. Finishing in a high spot like in a more balanced lobby is no longer good enough and hence not a useful skill. It's all or nothing here. Like in the hypothetical, suppose third place throws triple reds at second and then they get hit by a red shell from fourth place since their defense no longer exists. This is a sad reality that exists in free-for-all format, especially at lower levels. Take the following example, similar to this current discussion. Third place throws all their red shells at second place. This was a misplay because fourth place now reds third place. So the move third place did was a misplay and they rightfully got punished for it, but there's still injustice here since second place got punished for third place's mental error, and fourth place benefit from it. Because of a misplay, 10 players in the lobby benefit from the guy in second suffering the consequences. Again, this is why playing in teams can be so engaging. Now I'll take the exact same scenario but with a blue team and a red team. We would call this a trade because one person on each team got hit in the exchange. Now the guy in third place still misplays and gets punished for it by the player in fourth, but now his whole team has to suffer the disadvantage of losing the placements that they lost. Though second place still gets hit here wrongfully, this may actually be a good trade for him because of how it affected the standings. Though second place individually lost, he won because it may benefit his team. Say this happens. This exchange could potentially flip a winning race into a losing one because of a single misplay. You may argue that just as easily, however, someone can get themselves hit and have their team benefit from it. But this is okay because it's not a misplay. It's an optimal sacrifice. Even trades can punish or reward you in 6v6. It's simply just up to you to take advantage of it if you have one in your favor. It may not even end there too. Because of the consequences of this one decision, the other team can take advantage of the new state they're in. In this case, it'd be having everything behind first place. Suddenly, you're looking at a 20-point swing all stemming from a single error. This is the kind of justice that doesn't exist consistently in free-for-all formats. While free-for-all formats are still a working format that's produced many great tournaments, it has a lot of flaws compared to playing in teams. And we can cover some of these flaws up in the online scene, but with LANs, it becomes more obvious due to player imbalance that the flaws exist. And unfortunately, it's likely all we'll have for a while due to the ease of access when it comes to these in-person tournaments. So in summary, a lot of the most important skills the game has to offer are cut out of the game entirely when the skill level of a room is very uneven. This doesn't have to be between a D2 and a D8 player. Any skill mismatch may be highlighted here, even smaller ones, and it'll be frustrating to any player who feels that they played better who seems to lose almost as much as they win in these settings. The following thought may occur. Why should I care about investing my time playing in events like this? Well, it's because the better your local scene collectively gets, the more satisfying and fair the tournaments will become. And even with 6 stronger players instead of 2 at an event, the strongest players will be able to capitalize more often in exchanges against other good players, whereas when there are only 2 clear standout players, everything that happens between the 2 players, in this instance, gets amplified to a maximum. With even a couple of stronger players, even if a single player outplays you 4 times to 2, if your spread against the other stronger players was better than theirs, then you'll still tend to outperform them. And as we've gone over a lot in this series, more trials lead to better results. The ultimate goal is that you can compete in tournaments where everyone in the finals push themselves to become really good, and as a result, everyone would be a relatively worthy finalist. And that's when you have the best kinds of competitions because high-level fundamentals will start to matter in these competitions, and metagaming skills can start coming into play. It's just unfortunately not going to happen with very few strong players in a tournament, something that is tough for a new local scene to overcome. Of course, it's not a big deal if everyone is playing solely for fun, but I think the competitive drive is going to be what gets people to push for a better scene, push themselves, and ultimately get a rewarding experience out of the game. This is why I think the biggest key for growing the community both online and offline is to be better teachers on what it takes to improve. Not only does improvement of players allow for more satisfying races and even skill-based outcomes, but the act of sitting down with a player and helping them out, even on simple things like getting guaranteed defense and first while holding a coin, it helps to create bonds between those players. And you absolutely need good bonds to run a nice community, especially the in-person ones. So given everything that has been said in these videos up to this point, why is our community set up the way it is? Well, the largest competition in the MK8 community is MKU, which is a 6v6 tournament with items on because, as established, this is the best competitive format. And we've also established that there are other worthwhile formats than just teams, and these formats are fun in their own right. As discussed in this video, free-for-all is the preferred format outside of team tournaments, and even if free-for-alls are a little bit more random in nature compared to team matches, it's fun to change things up. This is why we also host 2v2 and 3v3s, so there's more variety. FFAs are nice because it's easier to enter them than the team tournaments, and they tend to be less of a commitment since they can be played easily in one day, unlike a league format. Having alternatives for people not in teams is important because it gives people something to do while they make sure to join the right team. Not every MK team will be right for everyone, and players shouldn't feel like they have to rush to make a decision on one. Players are going to want to find a team that speaks a familiar language, is typically of the same age group and around the same skill level as them. And a lot of players not in the online community play Mario Kart naturally as a solo game, especially in worldwide mode. This means that having lots of solo competitions, even in a community that prefers team matches, can allow new players a smooth transition, and eventually it will provide them a nice gateway into eventually getting acclimated for team competitions, the preferred competitive format. And many people may join the community with no intention of playing in teams, but they'll quickly understand why it's loved so much and want to join one. The goal is to have people dip their toe in the water because they may find that they like it and want to try it out. And in a way, solo tournaments can act as a bridge to 6v6 because some people will sign up specifically for a solo tournament, but then because they can now sign up for other tournaments, it may be something that happens later on. Once you have an account, it becomes easier to do everything else on the site. Outside of official tournaments, the community lounges exist for pickup games since you can't really have a tournament every day, and this allows for matchmaking with players around a similar skill level and is open 24/7. Again, another thing that the individual can participate in is a lounge, so it's nice to have and nice that it's active. On top of it all, we've deemed 12 races to be about the appropriate length for most matches, with sometimes only 8 happening when we're in a rush and many matches need to be played. Like mentioned, it's not too long, but it's a solid enough time length to help negate the impact of randomness. This blueprint has worked out really well in our community's history for a very long time, so outside of just 150cc deluxe players, we recommend this for Mario Kart Tour, 7, and even the 200 community as well. The point of the series was to help people understand how Mario Kart tournaments work better, so I hope I've accomplished this goal. Even if not, if you're listening now, I appreciate you for taking the time to hear me out and maybe learn about something new. Of course, I'd really recommend trying it out if you enjoy the game, and you may find it fascinating to discover how fun this game can be when playing at intense levels of competition. Now, the community is growing fast and waiting for MK9 to really blow up, and a lot of people say that the key to being great at a game is to be good at the one that came before it. On Mario Kart Central, in just 2 years, we've gained 10,000 plus site users with the system I described a minute ago, and things seem to be growing almost exponentially this year. If you're not involved yet but are interested in playing some of the competitions, I highly encourage you to check the community out and give it a go. Links to the main website and community Discord server are in the description, and if you have any questions or comments, feel free to drop them here as well. So that's all I have. Thanks for watching, everybody. I hope to see you on the track soon.